So yeah, just to give you a brief background, I'm a co-CEO at Mapon. Mapon is a telematics software provider and also a hardware provider. And I joined Mapon at year 2014, and since then I've been more or less connected with digital tachographs. I was lead for a remote download solution and also initial developer of the tachograph, which is also a product of Mapon. So I know quite a lot of internals about the analysis part of the tachograph data and algorithms and regulations. Yeah, and if we're talking about Mapon and tachograph, that's Mapon is the fleet management and asset tracking platform, and tachograph is the digital tachograph data analysis solution. And then we also have the hardware devices. We have also integrated our platform with various other hardware providers, and we also have mobile apps and things like that. And yeah, that's some blatant advertisement for the company I work for. But not to turn into this into an advertising session, I would like to say that this is an interactive session. I was not really aware of how many people would attend and who would be attending, so I wasn't really planning it to be a very interactive. So that's why I have the presentation. But if you at some point see that you can chime in and provide some more insight on some of the topic, and maybe I'm wrong at some point, then just feel free to join. Just like as Without Us did, just hit the share audio video button or write something in the chat, and then I'll try to keep track of that. Yeah. So. What is this stuff all about? And if you're talking about Mobility Package 1, then one of the first things was the intention was actually clarifying the rules. And multiple countries were providing some different explanations of the same rule sets. And one of the core principles of the Mobility Package is actually clarifying the rules and making less confusion for the drivers to understand how do they drive and whether you can rest as a co-driver while the other driver is working and things like that. Another huge point is that the tachograph regulation and the mobility package in general is also a way on how European Union or European Commission is taking care of the drivers and they understand how the drivers are working and they are willing to make improvements for the lives of the drivers. I mean, like. Not allowing the drivers to spend 45-hour rests in the vehicles and returning home once in a while and things like that. And then they also noticed that there are quite a lot of unexpected circumstances that need to be considered when the drivers are returning back home. For example, if there is a 1 hour drive missing from home, then according to the previous regulation, the driver had to spend his 45-hour break 1 hour from home, which is nonsense. And also the regulation tries to fix the issue of having too long trips abroad, and just because the drivers have to make the 45-hour breaks. And although it looks like these could be the real reasons, some of the countries, and especially our country and other Eastern European countries, see this regulation change as a market protection, just because if you're looking at the situation when the driver has to return every 4 weeks to home, then it's easier to get home from France to Germany or somewhere in the middle of the Europe than if you are the driver from Eastern Europe, go from Germany to somewhere in the Eastern Europe. So it could be the case that the intentions were pretty much the clarification of the rules and things like that, but also some of the parts is definitely market protection. And if you're looking at the changes that the Mobility Package 1 introduces, it's the clarification of the rules, as I was mentioning already. Like the crew driving changes, like previously, in some countries, in some occasions, it was considered that if you are sitting next to the driver and being as an available driver, then you are not really counted as a resting person. So in this case, the Mobility Package 1 just specifically notes that this is a rest if you're not engaged in helping the other driver and so on. Additionally, I would say this is a good thing, that just because that's clearly described. Another good thing is that previously it was possible to take weekly rests on ferries and trains. It was allowed to take only daily rests on ferries and trains, and now it's allowed to take also the weekly rests, also the reduced weekly rest, the 24-hour rests, and then 45-hour rests. Additionally, one of the things that is making most of the confusion is actually the mobility package one introduces the concept of the driver can take two weekly rests in a row, and I will try to explain this in a bit more detail on why does it make a lot of confusion, and this could be one of the reasons why drivers would be still willing to drive by the previous rule set and not really using this feature. And as I was already mentioning, then if the driver is returning home for a 24 or 45-hour break, he can use the extended driving time, 1 hour if he's resting for 24 hours and 2 hours if he's resting for 45 hours. And this is something that probably some companies would like to optimize for, but I wouldn't see it a good idea to try to optimize against that. But we'll get to that later on. Yeah, and then some other changes, like the regulation, it also says that after crossing the country border, the driver should be entering the country data, which country he is entering, at the first possible stopping location or at the border, which is an interesting thing, just because when we are seeing the data in the driver cards, the driver card capacity is limited, and this regulation change leads to us actually requiring to make the tachograph card data downloads more frequently, so that we don't lose any data for the 28-day period, or in a while the period will be changed to 56 days. And finally, I was already mentioning the market protection part, or the social moments of the driver life, which is returning home after every 4 weeks, which is also causing a bit of confusion, just because in the regulation, a week is defined from like a calendar week from Monday morning till Sunday evening, and if you're starting your work on Saturday evening, then how do you calculate the 4 weeks? Then it turns out to be just 3 weeks or something. So I would say that the mobility package, in a way, tries to solve the issues, but it also introduces new issues. So that's why probably 9 out of 10 people are answering that not everything is clear for them. One important topic about the tachograph and data sources, and this becomes more important if we're talking about the mobility package. And as you probably know, there are multiple ways of acquiring data from the digital tachograph. One is connecting to the vehicle CAN FMS connection, and then you get the live data of the vehicle, about the statuses, about the driver cards and things like that. But this data source actually has multiple limitations. It doesn't include country data. It doesn't include train ferry events. It doesn't include lots of other stuff like manual input, and also if the driver is making some errors at data entry, you cannot fix that without some specific stuff. And also, this requires you to do the calculations and analysis on the telematics platform. Another data source for the tachograph data is Stoneridge driver decision support system, or video counter system, which is a precise, I would say somewhat precise, just because it implements the interpretation of the regulation by the manufacturers, and due to the fact that tachographs are not really easily updatable, and the regulation that they are working by is actually the previous regulation. So yeah, and the good news is that apart from the D8 and CAN solution, this one includes the 1-minute rule, which means that there are some more precise events, and it doesn't include the mobility rule set yet, but probably will at some point of time. And if the driver is making some errors in manual input or something, you cannot fix that just because the data is calculated by the tachograph itself, and you receive only the estimates in the system. And basically, you see the same stuff as you see in the tachograph display. Then the final data source, and I would say the most trustable one, is actually the DDD files, and they are precise, digitally signed. Also include the 1-minute rules, just because the data is written from the digital tachograph and is reflecting the reality that has been recorded. Includes all of the country data, ferry, train events, and also contain the driver error events. For example, if the manual input is used wrongly or something. And the thing is that it could probably be fixed on the platform side, but that would require manual actions again. And the calculations are definitely on the telematics platform shoulders, which means that, according to my experience, that's not an easy thing to solve. But yeah, probably there's a solution that you can use some APIs or something from the other software providers and use that. If we're talking more in detail about the changes, then I'll try to go through a bit of the changes. And the first change is that I'm discussing is about drivers being able to return to the home, to their home or operational center where he's normally based, and the company must have the documentation on how it fulfills that obligation. So these are the two interesting things. One thing that I was mentioning already, that it's a definition of the week, and in regulation the week is defined as Monday to Sunday from 00 to 24:00, and the other part is how do transport companies actually fulfill that obligation by making all of the necessary documentation. And this is something that I see that the telematics software providers can actually help the companies to do, and actually provide means of keeping track of this scenario. The next point is 2 consecutive reduced weekly rests, and this is I would say one of the confusing parts, just because the regulation says that if the driver is engaged in the international transport of goods, he may take 2 consecutive reduced weekly rests, provided that the driver blah blah blah, etc. The interesting thing is that also, if we're looking into this previous regulation that was in force, 2 or even 3 reduced weekly rests were allowed. And the previous regulation says that if the 45-hour break is in the weekend, like starts on Sunday, ends on Monday, then you can count it to 1 week or the other week, but not really to the both weeks. And this picture that you see is a screenshot from Tachogram, where we put together an example of what's happening. And in this case, this week already has a 45-hour break. This one doesn't need it. It needs only 24-hour break. And then on the next week, we also have this same trick with that 45-hour break spanning over the weekend. And in this case, we have even 3 reduced weekly rests in a row, and it's according to the previous regulation, and not even doing anything with the mobility package. And if you're looking into this issue even further, then the regulation also says that you have to compensate the 2 weekly rests in a row before you actually start the 45-hour break, which means that you have to spend 42 hours extra before you can actually start the 45-hour break. And in this case, it looks like it doesn't make sense or much sense to use this feature of mobility package just because then in the end you're actually losing time or driving time. It's a lot better idea to do things like this, where you are like making the 45-hour breaks over the weekends and then optimizing in terms of when you have to make the rests. One important thing is that when we're trying to put together this example, actually this is a harsh example, just because it is very close to the limits of the actual weekly and bi-weekly driving times. So be careful with that, definitely. And there are two examples of compensations. Like one case is that the one as in previous screenshot, where there is a daily rest, then there is a compensation. In this case, it's 7 hours plus 2 hours missing, and then 45-hour break. In other cases, if the rests are shorter, according to regulation, you can manage to put them in even before the daily rest if you have enough time for that. And then some easy stuff on the end part. Weekly rest on the ferry train. I would say this is a very good change, just because we saw that there are quite a few ferry routes where the drivers are spending 24 hours or even more, and the rests are not really counted as weekly rests. And I would say this is a very good change. The idea is that you can again use 1 hour to drive on and off the ferry, and if you are willing to have the 45-hour break on the ferry, I believe that's pretty hard to find a ferry route like that. But still, the resting time on the ferry should be at least 8 hours if you are willing to use the 45-hour break. But yeah, I would say this is a very good change that will help quite a few drivers to manage their times. And additionally, extending the driving time to return to home, I would say also a very good example on how to ease the lives of the drivers. But still, there are some very interesting consequences with the regulation definition that says that if you are going home for a 24-hour break, then you can drive 1 extra hour. If you are going for a 45-hour break, you can drive extra 2 hours, but you have to make additional 30 minutes of rest just before that. And when you're trying to figure out what does that actually mean, then it becomes a bit of a mess. So yeah, so far so good. I would say that I pretty much run through the presentation, and there are some basic conclusions about that. I would say that if we're looking into what telematics platforms should do in terms of mobility package 1, then I would say that one of the first things is actually providing a means of documenting or tracking the driver return home, which is somewhat a business process. Probably some of the smaller companies can make that on their own, but if the company is bigger, employing, I don't know, hundreds or even thousands of drivers, then this becomes of a problem. And I believe that's a good task to solve for the driver. But in this case, it also means that you have to understand more about the drivers, about their home locations, about the company operational centers and something like that. Another thing is that I would say that the telematics platform should be doing the calculations from the DDD files mostly, and also trying to do the file downloads automatically as often as possible. I've heard of some companies doing that even on each of the tachograph card insertions, so that they can understand what happened during the period when the card was extracted. And in this case, if we're looking at the regulation that was saying that after each of the country crossing borders, you have to enter the country, then this actually requires you to do downloads more often than every 5 days or every 10 days. That's usual stuff that's configured in the telematics platforms. And if you're trying to optimize for the driving time, then probably skipping some of the options on the mobility package could be useful. For example, that I was showing on how to optimize the previous, like the existing regulation, and manage to put some 3 reduced weekly rests in between 245 weekly rests. I believe that's something that the mobility package still is missing. But the good news is that there are only some of the rules that are mandatory in the mobility package, and as long as you are like compliant with the existing rules of having in every 2 weeks 1 45-hour break and 1 24-hour break, you are all good to go. You don't have to do this mobility package requirement that you must make 2 24-hour breaks abroad and things like that. So yeah, if you are up for optimizing driving time, then the mobility package is probably not a good choice for optimization.